If all state federations in India were as progressive as the Goa Football Association, Indian football will grow at a very rapid pace. This was a statement given by the former president of AIFF, Mr. Priya Ranjan, who headed the AIFF in the early and mid 2000s. And this was what he had to say about about the state of football in Goa. But was Goa always this bigger superstar in football? Because politically, Goa is very different from any other part of the country, right? So, in today's episode, this is what we are going to be talking about: why the smallest state, one of the smallest states of India, is one of the major footballing hubs of the country, and why does Goa continue to give us top footballers every single year. Just last week I made this video on Northeast and it has had a great response. So I've decided to make a series of the footballing hubs of India, and today this is going to be the second episode where we are going to talk about Goa football and what has made Goa into one of the footballing hubs in the country. So again, I think as I've already discussed in the Northeast video, that in a lot of the footballing hubs, the colonization by the Western countries has been a major reason. When we talked about Northeast, the influence of Bengal, the influence of the British East India Company was one of the major reasons why football got into the Northeast, because Bengal was the hub of the British East India Company, and Northeast being nearby, a lot of what happened in Bengal also, sort of in some ways went to the northeastern states, and that is why football became very popular there. A similar thing happened with Goa as well, but not with the British East India Company. It was the Portuguese who had colonized Goa and were the colonizing power in Goa. And Portuguese influence एक बहुत बड़ा रीज़न रहा है क्यों गोवा एक बहुत फुटबॉलिंग डोमिनेंट कंट्री रही है. बिकॉज फॉर द पोर्चुगीज, for any colonizing country, sports was a medium of them connecting to the local masses, was a way of them, अपने आप को थोड़ा सा ह्यूमन दिखाने के लिए, बिकॉज स्पोर्ट्स को हमेशा एक यूनाइटिंग एलिमेंट की तरह देखा गया है. तो फुटबॉल को भी गोवा में पोर्चुगीज़ लोगों ने बहुत फेमस करवाया है. तो एक पोर्चुगीज़ इन्फ्लुएंस एक बहुत बड़ा पार्ट है क्यों गोवा में फुटबॉल इतना प्रेवलेंट है. बट फुटबॉल गोवा में इंट्रोड्यूस एक्चुअली एक ब्रिटिश प्रीस्ट ने किया, विच वॉज इंट्रोड्यूस इन गोवा in late 1800s. It was around 1880s where football was first introduced by a British priest in Goa, where he wanted to spread Christianity was growing in Goa, where majority of the population was Christian by now. And in order to promote the idea of harmony, promote the idea of Christianity, football became a tool where the Christian missionaries could unite people, could harmonize people and bring people together. So it was a British priest who brought football into Goa. But ultimately, because of the Portuguese colonization, the Portuguese had a major role to play in expanding football in Goa. So Goa 2000s में नहीं आए, फुटबॉल गोवा में 2000 या लेट 80s 90s में नहीं आए जब गोवा इंडिया के ऑफिशियली पार्ट बन चुका था. बट फुटबॉल इज़ वेरी ओल्ड इन गोवा. एंड द फर्स्ट क्लब जो अपेरेंटली गोवा में बना था वो 1905 में द बॉयज सोशल क्लब था, विच वॉज द फर्स्ट फुटबॉल क्लब established in Goa. And by the early 1920s, Goa was hosting international matches between the amateur Portuguese club and the British armies. So football is more than a century old in Goa. So again, this was one reason कि क्योंकि इतना पुराना है, इतना कल्चरली कंबाइनिंग और एक यूनाइटिंग फैक्टर रहा है, तो इसलिए एक फुटबॉल का गोवा का एक फुटबॉलिंग हब बनने का रीज़न पोर्चुगल कॉलोनाइजेशन एंड द अर्ली स्टार्ट वाज वन ऑफ द मेजर रीजंस. नाउ एक और बड़ा रीज़न आई थिंक जो गोवा में फुटबॉल को डेवलप, आपकी कॉलोनाइजेशन होगी, अर्ली हो गया, इंडिया को इंडिपेंडेंस मिल गई, गोवा वाज स्टिल पार्ट ऑफ द पोर्चुगल एम्पायर इवन आफ्टर इंडिपेंडेंस. बट आई थिंक एवर सिंस जो कॉलोनाइजेशन वो हट गई थी गोवा से, आई थिंक द लोकल राइवलरी बिटवीन क्लब्स, the support of local politicians has been one of the major reasons why football kept growing, kept uniting the masses and kept everyone involved in the sport. So again, local politics और local club की rivalries ना एक बहुत बड़ा part बन गया था why football kept growing in Goa. तो अर्ली से 19 जो बहुत फेमस क्लब्स है, आप सलगांवकर ले लो, स्पोर्टिंग क्लब वास्को ले लो, सो ये सारे क्लब 1950s में प्रोफेशनल सेटअप पे बनने लग गए थे. गोवा was home to those iron ore industrialists, and उन्हीं iron ore industrialists एज एन एडवर्टाइजमेंट अपने आप को प्रमोट करने के लिए फुटबॉल क्लब्स चलाना शुरू कर दिया था. एंड दे बिकेम अ सिंबल ऑफ जोन्स हो गया, कंपनीज होगी, राइवलरी का वो बन गया. एंड दैट इज व्हाट आल्सो लेड टू अ लॉट ऑफ सपोर्ट, इट गार्नर्ड अ लॉट ऑफ लोकल सपोर्ट बाय द लोकल पीपल ऑफ गोवा. 1970 में बंदोड़कर ट्रॉफी शुरू हो जाती है आपकी, राइट, विच अल्टीमेटली गॉट अ लॉट ऑफ पीपल इन गोवा कमिंग टू वॉच देयर लोकल टीम्स, चाहे वो डेम्पो हो, चाहे वो चर्चिल ब्रदर्स हो, चाहे वो सलगांवकर हो. सो the introduction of the Bandodkar trophy, these Goan clubs जो गोवा का कल्चरल आइडेंटिटी गोवा को सिग्निफाई थे, बिकॉज बात चल रही थी गोवा को महाराष्ट्र में मर्ज करने की, कि गोवा वुड नॉट गेट अ सेपरेट स्टेट स्टेटस. बट ऑल ऑफ दिस with local clubs coming into the picture, with new trophies coming in, with people having that factor ki I belong to this particular club, I belong to this particular region. So I think that sort of factor, that sort of unity, that sort of feeling of statehood of being a Goan, I think that also contributed, because चाहे वो एरियाज के अलग अलग थे बट अल्टीमेटली इंडिविजुअल फैंस अलग थे, बट ऑल ऑफ देम रिप्रेजेंटेड गोवा. सो आई थिंक दीज लोकल राइवलरीज, दीज कमिंग अप ऑफ लोकल क्लब्स, आई थिंक बहुत बड़ा रीज़न था कि गोवा फुटबॉल कंटिन्यू टू ग्रू इवन आफ्टर द पोर्चुगीज लेफ्ट. ये भी हो सकता था पोर्चुगीज चले गए तो फुटबॉल का इन्फ्लुएंस खत्म हो सकता था, बट बिकॉज ऑफ दीज लोकल क्लब्स एंड बिकॉज ऑफ लोकल पॉलिटिक्स, आई थिंक दिस अल्टीमेटली लेड टू football in Goa even going a step ahead. Now, I think एक और बड़ा reason जो उसके बाद आता है is the role of the state federations and the early success that Goa had after Goa's liberation from the Portugal empire. And 1980s में, early 1980s में गोवा ने अपनी फर्स्ट संतोष ट्रॉफी भी, they won 2 संतोष ट्रॉफीज in a row, and that is when also it was a similar time frame जब गोवा को इंडियन यूनियन का भी पार्ट बना दिया गया था. सो गोवा एज अ स्टेट स्टार्टेड परफॉर्मिंग एट द नेशनल लेवल्स. वहाँ पे a lot of different teams used to travel to Goa, but Goa as a state had now become a successful football team at the national level. जैसे मैंने ऑलरेडी बताया, उन्होंने 1980s में 2 संतोष ट्रॉफीज जीत ली थी, राइट. एंड उसके बाद दे वर गिविंग कॉम्पिटिशन एट द नेशनल लेवल. अगर वो फाइनल्स में नहीं आ रहे थे, दे वर परफॉर्मिंग ग्रेट, दे वर रीचिंग द सेमीफाइनल्स और द फाइनल्स इन मोस्ट ऑफ द ओकेजन्स. एंड जैसे मैंने वीडियो की स्टार्टिंग में कहा था कि फॉर्मर AIFF प्रेसिडेंट, गोवा फुटबॉल फेडरेशन इतनी प्रोग्रेसिव है, वो क्यों है? एंड वो स्टेटमेंट क्यों गोवा इतनी पावरफुल थी? बिकॉज जब आई लीग शुरू हुई 2007-2008 में आई लीग जब शुरू हुई थी, तो द फर्स्ट 6 टाइटल्स, नॉट 1, नॉट 2, नॉट 3, but the first 6 titles of the I-League, of the top division then of Indian football, was all won by clubs from Goa. उस टाइम वन ऑफ द स्मॉलेस्ट स्टेट ऑफ द कंट्री, एंड राइवल्स में केरला था, पंजाब था, द बंगाल क्लब्स थे, यू हैड हैदराबाद, बट इट वाज द 3-4 जो हिस्टोरिकल आपके सलगांवकर, डेम्पो, चर्चिल ब्रदर्स, ये क्लब्स थे जिन्होंने पहले 6 आई लीग टाइटल जीते. आई थिंक देयर वाज दिस वन सीजन जहाँ पे टॉप 6 में 4 गोवा की टीम्स थी आई लीग में. सो यू कैन इमेजिन द लेवल ऑफ डोमिनेशन दैट गोवा हैड, अ वेरी वेरी स्मॉल स्टेट बोथ इन टर्म्स ऑफ पॉपुलेशन एंड इन टर्म्स ऑफ एरिया, बट इट वाज स्टिल डोमिनेटिंग फुटबॉल एट द वेरी टॉप लेवल ऑफ इंडिया. And that is what also led to people being extremely passionate. They were seeing their role model, they were seeing Goa winning titles, they were seeing local club winning titles, they were seeing internationals coming into their local teams, they were seeing professional setups coming into their local team. So again एक बहुत बड़ा aspiration का element भी देता है to these aspiring young footballers. Yeah, another reason why Goa does so well or has done so well historically is, again, I think one thing that I've mentioned in my previous video as well is the role of the state federation. And I think in videos ko banate hue na, I also realize ki the role that state federations play, and it's not as difficult as what probably AIFF or probably some of the other state federations make it look. It's simple things. Doing the simple things right is what makes a great footballing state, and that is exactly what Goa did as well. यार जहाँ पे हम आज बात करते हैं यूथ डेवलपमेंट की ग्रास रूट पे फोकस करना है, गोवा स्टार्टेड देयर यूथ प्रोग्राम्स गोइंग बैक टिल 1998, जहाँ पे स्टेट फेडरेशन ने शायद कुछ सोचा भी नहीं होगा यूथ प्रोग्राम्स के बारे में. एज अ स्टेट फेडरेशन गोवा वाज द फर्स्ट स्टेट फेडरेशन जिन्होंने अपने स्टैट्स को डिजिटाइज करवाया, रिकॉर्ड्स को डिजिटाइज करवाया. गोवा वाज वन ऑफ द फर्स्ट स्टेट्स who got sponsorships in their top division, in their state leagues. तो इस तरीके की चीज़ें थी जो गोवा अभी नहीं, आज से 30 साल पहले करना शुरू ऑलरेडी हो गया था. एंड आई थिंक यही चीज़ें जिनका रिजल्ट हमको लेट 2000 में मिला, जहाँ पे मैंने ऑलरेडी बताया कि द फर्स्ट 6 टाइटल्स ऑफ द आई लीग, द 10 टॉप डिविजन ऑफ इंडियन फुटबॉल was all won by Goan clubs. So again, you can see it was a 10-year effort or a 6-7-year, 10-year effort where the youth programs developed, the sponsorships, the money came into Goan football, more money came into Goan football, which ultimately led, to them winning those I-League titles a decade later. Not just this, at the turn of the century, जब early 2000 शुरू हुआ था, गोवा ने अपने multiple under-12, under-14 centers establish कर दिए थे. When coaching after a playing career was not a choice made by a lot of players because there was not a lot of money in football that time, right? And the former footballers preferred a government job or any other job because that would be financially or monetarily more rewarding. What Goa also did, they started providing free AFC coaching certifications, AFC licensed trainings to their former players, to people who wanted to become football coaches, so as to develop the culture of football, so as to ask former footballers to continue pursuing football, because they felt that former footballers were the one who can sort of develop the next generation. And I think it was one of the brilliant moves made by the Goa State Association, the Goa Footballing Association. And यार आज के टाइम में, where again the similar thing that I have mentioned in the previous video, where states do not have a single league, Goa has around 4 to 5 tiers, 4 to 5 levels of their state footballing competition, where obviously जो top tiers हैं वो I League, second division, third division के लिए promote होते हैं, but even there are 4 to 5 different tiers of competition. The state league का जो competition Goa footballing league चलती है, हर एक छोटे छोटे village से there is a club that is registered. So that is what ultimately leads to top players reaching at the top of Goan football, because there is such a huge supply of players in the bottom league, in the lower leagues, and then ultimately only the top stars end up coming to the top of the table, top of the funnel, अगर मैं इसको कह सकता हूँ. So again, the role of the state associations was again a major factor in Goa's growth as a footballing state. Now, I think last point में जो मैंने mention करा था कि only the top players reaching the zenith of the Goan football league. Again, I think one thing that Goa does not have is the shortage of those poster boys or people that young Goans can look up to. Legendary players like Clifford Miranda, Bruno Coutinho. I think these are some of the biggest names to have come out of Goan football, right? The current assistant coach of the national team, Mahesh Gauli, he comes from Goa. Current Indian superstars of Liston Colasso, Brandon Fernandez, who play for, probably the biggest teams in the Indian Super League, come out of Goa. So another reason, Goa has given India more than 50 plus internationals. Neville D'Souza, scored a hat-trick against Australia. Again, one of the biggest names in Indian football. So Goa also, like a lot of the northeastern states, a lot of footballing state, has no dearth, no shortage of role models, which again, if I was a young kid growing up in Goa, I would have loved to be another Brandon Fernandez. I would have, wanted to be another Liston Colasso, playing for India regularly, scoring goals for Mohan Bagan, scoring goals for Mumbai City FC, earning in crores, because that is what now ISL has helped a lot of Indian footballers do. So I think that would have been my ultimate dream, and that would have been my dream as a young one, because I have so many role models in front of me. And again, I think lastly, one of the major reasons why football continues to be a great, why football continues to grow in Goa and why Goa is still a footballing hub of the country, is the cultural unification that football brings. Goa will have people of the Konkani, descendants. They'll have Portuguese descendants. They'll have, people who've probably migrated from other states centuries ago. But all of those, distinctions are, forgotten when football comes into the picture. Everyone, whether it is a Konkani or a Portuguese, or someone who's come from the other state, when it comes to football, when it comes to supporting their football club, they all just unite, and they're all, so engrossed, so involved in just the entire process, or the entire journey of being a footballing fan. You know, uh, Goa, again, it's a very tourism dependent. It's not the richest of regions of the country. So people find it as a way to, change fortunes of their family, to uplift their families, probably out of, not the nicest of realities that they have back home. And when players like Liston, players like Brandon earn in crores, they see again themselves as, this is my way of uplifting my family. This is my way of promoting, what being a Goan is. And this is my way of, just combining everyone from my village, from my city, to, just come out and support. Because if my village goes on to watch, if Liston Kulasso's villagers see ki yaar, this is Liston Kulasso, he used to play here, everyone was so engrossed in Liston Kulasso growing up, I would again want my child, my son, I would want myself to be up there as well. So I think again this unification also plays an extremely huge role. This cultural relevance, cultural importance also plays a very big role, and will continue to play a big role for any hub or for any footballing region to continue being a dominant region in football. So just like Goa, I think Northeastern is another such footballing hub which has its own challenges, which has its own, history, but still continues to be one of the major hubs of football in India. So if you like this video I've made another video on Northeast and why Northeast is one of the major footballing hubs of the country. So please do watch that video. And if you've liked this video, subscribe to Football Unplugged. Let me know what other footballing video, what other topics of Indian football you would want me to talk about. Share this video to your fellow Goans, your fellow Indians, whosoever you would want this video. And again, thank you so much for tuning in. It's been a pleasure, and continue supporting Football Unplugged.